Hello, it's Chris Hynes from Wealthy. I hope you're doing well. Today I just wanted to run through a quick video talking about what's in store for Australian real estate in 2022 and beyond. I'm sure many of you who are listening today have read multiple reports that are out at the moment and findings from other researchers talking about the Australian property market for 2022, how we might start to see, you'd say, the slowing of the boom that we saw over the past 18 months, really since the start and the build-up of the COVID pandemic. Now, there's many different reports out there. Some are more negative and some are more positive than others. But today we're going to try and provide some form of an unbiased opinion of the Australian property market. So we'll run through that very shortly. If you've got any questions in regards to anything that's mentioned in this video today, please feel free to leave your comments down below. Reach out to anyone in the team and we're all more than happy to have a chat to you. So we'll get started, and to start off with, we'll run through this page here. So I've been looking at many research reports, many breakdowns from different researchers in the Australian property market as well. And from what I can see, there's a lot of positive news about Adelaide, Brisbane, Canberra, and Hobart. Now, from a price point perspective, when you're comparing them to Sydney and Melbourne, they are a more affordable option to be purchasing in. And lots of many researchers out there are projecting price growth in excess of 30%, between that 30 and 45% for detached homes in the next 2 years. So still some very substantial growth is expected in these markets. Now, looking at Brisbane and Hobart more specifically, they're expected to achieve more than 20% in capital growth this year. I read a report shortly before presenting this that mentioned that they're expecting Brisbane to achieve about 25 to 27% price growth this year. So some very substantial growth in those markets. Despite people moving back from Brisbane to Melbourne, we're still seeing, or now that borders are open as well, we'll go into it in a bit more detail later on, but now that we're seeing borders reopen, we're seeing that migration come back into the country, and of course it's helping with that employment side of things as well. So Brisbane and Hobart expected to achieve more than 20% in capital growth this year. Adelaide and Canberra are expected to see about 10% price growth, or capital growth, this year as well. As it stands, there is unprecedented number of people looking to move home. You could say the COVID pandemic has reshaped the way in which we want to live now. There's the hybrid model from a work front where you can work remotely. So if you're looking to benefit from a lifestyle perspective and you live in Sydney, there's the opportunity to move up to somewhere like Brisbane or the Sunshine Coast, live on the beach, more affordable place to purchase a home as well, better standard of living. And I think we'll continue to see people migrating within Australia. Now, you've got record levels of household equity and reserve cash. Obviously, during the pandemic, there was nowhere for people to go and spend their money as freely. You couldn't go to a restaurant, you couldn't go to a bar, you couldn't go out and about and spend your money in the way that we were spending our money before. So now people have built up this equity in their home and they have this reserve cash as well. Now, in terms of the volumes of property, we are seeing record low volumes of properties for sale and rent. Then a combination of all of those above factors that we've mentioned will influence price points towards a continuation of very strong price growth in asset values for some time to come. Now, Australia is, you could say, this is the start of a new era. So we're very early on in this new era, and we're going to see some extremely high rates of home upgrades and relocations within the market. It's expected that Australia's economy will advance to the next level within this era. And there are, I'll leave a link in the description below, but there's some very compelling charts that show past, you'd say, recessions, or how the Australian market responded after the recession, after the GFC. Australia is very close to being at full employment as well. So that unemployment rate is continuing to go down in a very aggressive downward manner, you could say. As of 2022, borders are going to be reopening. I guess we've seen the introduction of borders reopening as it stands. There are still some restrictions in place, but it is beginning to bring in, you could say, the migrants that are living overseas that want to live in Australia, and we're starting to see an influx of migration into Australia once again. The number of jobs currently advertised are at all-time high, and with an insufficient skilled labour workforce to fill these positions, we must rely on the overseas migration. Australia is on track for the highest rates of growth in 15 years within this period of time. Now, the next few years are set to bring an enormous change by the way of hybrid working, migrating populations, and of course, advancements in technology. Now, lastly, just the last slide of this presentation. So Australia is currently in its biggest infrastructure boom in history. So there's over 430 projects underway in the country. They're consisting in values in excess, as a whole, in excess of $218 billion that are set to be completed by 2025. So that's going to add significant value to a lot of areas around the country. We're seeing massive infrastructure projects popping up in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Hobart, all of them at the moment. I guess if you were to look at Brisbane, you've got Queen's Wharf, and that's a significant master plan project that's currently underway. We're seeing the introduction of the Parramatta Light Rail in the west of Sydney as well. When you're looking at Melbourne, they're also introducing the light rail service that will provide to the outer ring of Melbourne as well. So these are significant infrastructure projects that aren't just going to benefit one region, but that line that connects different parts and different suburbs of Melbourne, of Sydney, are going to benefit substantially from this rail line being put in. Now, according to the reports that I've been looking through, many borrowers are currently actually ahead on their mortgage payments, and as overseas migration commences at a time when supply is tight, it's going to create further activity within the property market. According to Propertyology research, 233,716 dwellings were listed for sale at the end of November, which represents an 11-year low. The last time Australian resale supply was at this level, the Australian population was 3.5 million people less, and the nation's total dwelling stock was 1.8 million less. So we're going to see what we believe is a lot of activity within that property market within 2022 and beyond. Now, as so few properties are listed for sale, upward pressure on asset values is likely to remain intense in 2022 and beyond. I think the Australian property market is poised for another strong year. I don't think that these levels of growth will be as dramatic as we saw last year. There was a lot of pent-up demand last year. Of course, we've still got limited supply, which is, you could say, a contributing factor to those house prices and the demand for these properties. We've got a record number of people looking to relocate their home at the moment, relocate where they're living, change from a lifestyle perspective, whatever it may be, but there's that limited number of supply. So it's going to create a frenzy of activity still within the property market. We're going to see some very strong growth this year as a whole. We're seeing rents increasing at a very drastic level as well, and that's another thing to be wary of when we're looking at our investment properties now moving forward. Of course, we want to consider the value of the property and how much it's going to be worth and how much it's going to grow, but we also need to consider that the tenants that are moving into our property are going to be capable of paying these increased rents as they're growing at an extortionate rate at the moment. But I hope that's given you a nice, short, concise breakdown of the Australian property market, what's in store for 2022 and beyond. If you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or the team in Sydney, and we're all more than happy to have a chat with you. So thank you once again and have a fantastic week. Thank you.